said very boldly, you could end this Ukrainian-Russia war in 24 hours.
Yeah.
Hello, and welcome back to Liberal Breakdown. So let's talk about this Trump headline that just dropped. Apparently, Donald Trump is now suggesting the U.S. should walk away from trying to mediate peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. You know, the same guy who, just a year ago, was walking around saying, "I'll end the war in 24 hours. Just watch me." Yeah, that guy. So now that he's actually back in office and dealing with the reality of global politics, it seems like his 24-hour peace plan has turned into, we might just give up if it doesn't go our way. I mean, if this isn't classic Trump, I don't know what is. Bold claims, no plan, and then blame everyone else when it doesn't magically work out.
Well, today, the future of Ukraine peace talks really running up against the clock. Just moments ago, we heard from President Trump, who was asked about remarks from Secretary of State Marco Rubio when he said the U.S. would need to decide, quote, within days whether an end to the war is in fact possible, adding that if not, the U.S. would, quote, move on. As I noted, the president was just asked about this. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, very shortly.
How many days is that?
No specific number of days, but quickly. We want to get it done. If for some reason one of the two parties makes it very difficult, we're just going to say you're foolish, you're fools, you're horrible people, and we're going to just take a pass.
In a press conference this week, Trump basically said that if Russia and Ukraine don't make quick progress toward a peace deal, the U.S. might just walk away from the negotiations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio backed it up, saying, "We'll give them a few days to get their act together." Yeah, because nothing says serious diplomatic effort like putting an artificial timer on one of the most complicated and deadly conflicts in modern history. What's next? A shot clock? Let's be clear. Walking away from peace talks doesn't just hurt Ukraine, it strengthens Putin. It sends a message that the U.S. can't be trusted as a global leader, and it completely undermines the Ukrainian people who have been fighting tooth and nail to defend their democracy. As someone who actually believes in diplomacy, human rights, and, facts, this is not how you handle a war. This is how you campaign on a fake promise, get into office, realize it's hard, and then backpedal while pretending like it's someone else's fault. I'll end the war in 24 hours. Right. Maybe if the plan was surrender to Putin.
Gabe, you first here, because a few hours ago, the White House put out a tweet saying, in essence, Garcia's never coming back. What can you tell us?
That's right, Alex. And just a few moments ago, President Trump in the Oval Office was blasting Senator Chris Van Hollen for going down to El Salvador. And this is a fight that the White House wants to have. They, again, on social media and several interviews over the last several days, have been really painting this narrative that it is Democrats that are focusing on this alleged gang member. And even just now in the Oval Office, President Trump reading from a list of accusations against Abrego Garcia. And once again, you see right there a post just a short time ago from the official White House account on X saying that Abrego Garcia is not coming back, even though the Supreme Court ruled that the administration should facilitate his return to the U.S. Now, Alex, in just a short time ago, we also heard from the president. And he was asked about this report that several migrants in Texas, at an ICE facility in Texas, had been told that they could soon be deported under the Alien Enemies Act, the ACLU, filing paperwork overnight trying to stop that. The president was asked about that specific report and whether they would be deported. President Trump said he didn't know specifically about that case, but he said, if they're bad people, I would certainly authorize it. Our people voted for me to get them out. A judge wasn't elected to do that. I was elected to do that.
And just when you thought we were done with the headlines, oh no, Trump's still busy throwing punches. This time at Senator Chris Van Hollen. Yes, Trump is now calling a sitting U.S. senator a fake for doing something that actually takes guts, visiting a man who was wrongfully deported by the U.S. government. Van Hollen went to El Salvador to meet Kilmar Abrego Garcia, a man who was living in Maryland, legally protected from deportation, and still somehow got deported in what's being called a bureaucratic error. But of course, in classic Trump fashion, instead of taking any accountability or, expressing concern about someone being yanked from the country he called home, Trump went full attack mode, accused Van Hollen of grandstanding, said the visit was staged, called him, wait for it, a fool. He's a fake. He's a loser. That trip was for the media, okay? Total disaster. Yeah, because clearly the guy who staged Bible photo ops in front of churches has the moral high ground here. But let's get real. This wasn't just a media stunt. This was about justice, about fighting for someone who got swept up in an immigration system that's increasingly cruel, chaotic, and politicized. And it speaks volumes that Trump's biggest concern isn't why this man was wrongfully deported, it's who's getting credit for caring. Maybe if Van Hollen had brought enthusiasm to the meeting, Trump would have supported it. This kind of stuff matters. It's not just about one man, it's about what kind of country we are. Are we the country that fixes our mistakes, or the country that doubles down and smears anyone who dares to call them out? And just when you thought the Trump administration couldn't get any more brazen, here comes a new twist. In a recent interview, President Trump stated that he would allow deportations of migrants in Texas, asserting that judges have no authority to intervene. He emphasized that it's his job to deport individuals, and if a judge disagrees, so be it. These comments come amid ongoing legal battles over the administration's use of the Alien Enemies Act to justify deportations, even after federal judges have issued orders to halt them. Let that sink in. A sitting president openly defying judicial authority, claiming it's his prerogative to deport individuals without regard for court rulings. This isn't just an attack on due process. It's a direct challenge to the rule of law. Legal experts have expressed concern over this approach, warning that it undermines the checks and balances that are fundamental to our democracy. At what point do we draw the line? When does political power become an excuse to trample on constitutional rights? It's time to hold those in power accountable and ensure that the law applies to everyone, regardless of their position.
It's good to be home. Now we need to end the illegal abduction of Kilmar Abrego Garcia and bring him home too. We need to bring Mr. Abrego Garcia home to protect his constitutional rights to due process. And it's also important that people understand this case is not just about one man. It's about protecting the constitutional rights of everybody who resides in the United States of America. If you deny the constitutional rights of one man, you threaten the constitutional rights and due process for everyone else in America.
So, to close it out, Senator Chris Van Hollen just got back from El Salvador after meeting Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the Maryland resident who was wrongfully deported despite legal protection and a court order saying he couldn't be removed. At his press conference, Van Hollen called it what it is, an injustice. He said Abrego Garcia had been kept in isolation, totally cut off from the outside world, and only moved to a more humane facility after the press and international community started asking questions. And just to make it even more absurd, the Salvadoran government literally tried to stage a photo op by placing margaritas on the table during their meeting, like they were shooting a travel commercial instead of addressing a human rights violation. Van Hollen called it Margaritagate, and honestly, I'm glad he did. He also called out the Trump administration, again, for ignoring a Supreme Court order that demanded Abrego Garcia's return. Just totally blew it off, because apparently when Trump doesn't like a ruling, he just decides it doesn't count. This is what authoritarianism looks like: ignoring the courts, attacking senators, dodging accountability, and then spinning it like you're the victim. Senator Van Hollen did something rare. He showed up. He spoke truth to power. He stood with someone who was wronged when most politicians wouldn't even touch the case. That's leadership. That's courage. So the next time Trump talks about enthusiasm or calls someone a fake for defending due process, remember Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Remember who actually stood up for justice and who was too busy looking for applause. That's it for today. See you at the next one.